Okay. Why did it not make it? Yeah, but it usually says this meeting is being recorded. Can we make sure that the TVs aren't muted?
TV's not muted.
Or like some.
I don't even
Like it usually says like
there's a microphone button.
So Alaska was amazing. How was your
agenda?
Oh, just delayed.
Oh
yeah, that's where I was at. I was away. And I just decided we actually did have some friends visit us. And I wasn't going to take, I don't know how long. It's like 1 year, you know, maybe I missed the quorum. So it was okay.
Well, I was in the air on a 6-hour flight from Boston to Vancouver. So
Was
no,
Okay.
that's not on.
Why?
was it? It was a vacation.
Oh yeah, it was cruise to Alaska.
We've been talking about him, but I've never been to Alaska.
Yes, I did.
We're good. Oh, all right. Oh, was it just okay? Wonderful. Hey, Steve, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. All right.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, John, you're gonna have to clip out the first couple minutes of this. All right.
Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Can everyone in this room hear what's going on?
All
Good.
right. Yes.
All right, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Town of McCandless Planning Commission meeting for October 3rd. We have several items on the agenda that we will be going through. There is a general public comment, which is what I suspect many of you are here for. That will be coming up at the end. Item number 1 on the agenda is a continued discussion for the rezoning request at 8807 Peebles Road. Do we have any?
I think we do actually have more people here for people.
Well, okay. Good. Is the presentation?
I am Doug Breinhardt from Nair Consultant Engineers. We'll take a brief description of what we're proposing here. We're proposing to rezone the property located 8807 Peoples Road from an RM zoning district to the MN zoning district. The property adjacent to it at 8801 is already zoned the MN zoning district. The developer is proposing to utilize both properties to construct a 2-story totaling 12,000 square foot office dental on the second floor, I'm sorry, and on the first floor they're open to doing retail development now on the first floor. Also they're proposing an access drive onto Knoll Avenue Knoll Street, and then a full access on the Peoples Road as well. If you have any questions, I have the developer here is also going to occupy the dental office. I have the building architect, I have the real estate agent for the property, and the current property owners of the property as well, if you have any questions.
Okay. We'll start up here. Shelley, you want to start? Any questions?
You know, before we get going, I apologize, Shelley. We just shortly before the meeting, there was communication that we received from, I think, the property owner that they had asked to be communicated to the planning commission. So I just wanted to kind of read that into the record. So it's kind of part of your, you know, the presentation overall for the application. And then after that is done, I will forward it to all of you so that you have it. So this is from Mr. Let's see if I say the last name right. Thank you, Mr. Konstantakis. He is the property owner. He and his wife Karen have shared that they have been life and business partners over 30 years, owned and operated successful childcare center at 88 Peebles from 2003 to 2021, which unfortunately closed due to the staffing shortage related COVID. They purchased the property subject to this request, which is 8807 Peoples Road in 2015, with a thought that one day both properties could be developed in the future. Both buildings have been vacant with no income since 2021. They have continued to pay property taxes, utilities, and general maintenance during this time. And there was someone who resided at 8807 Peebles this summer, but they were not a paying tenant. Both properties were listed for sale as of May 2022. The current offer, which is what has generated this rezoning request, is the only one that they have received. They signed a sales agreement in March of 2023, and it is their opinion that this change would further the health, safety, and welfare of the residents in the community, as well as increase property values. Activity on the developed property would mostly be limited to working hours Monday and Friday, and mostly quiet on weekends and holidays. The buyers are a husband and wife, a family business, and they plan to build a first-class building with landscaping to complement the property and the community. 8807 Peebles is surrounded by 8801 Peebles, which is zoned MN. And if 8807 Peebles is not rezoned to MN, as is the request, then the property would have limited development opportunities. So that is sort of the statement that they would like you all.
RJ, can I just ask for clarification? They purchased both properties in 2015?
It sounds like they've owned the corner piece, which is, no, excuse me. They've owned, hang on, let me forward this to all of you, and then I will pull up the concept map so it's a little easier.
8801 since 2003.
2003?
Yeah,
So
2015 that the neighbor approached us about selling.
The so the property that is highlighted in yellow on the screen here is the one that is subject to the rezoning request, and that is 8807 Peebles Road. The property that is out, you know, it's in this darker black line surrounding the subject property, I believe, is 8801, and that was where the child care facility was. Yes. So I guess if there are any, I'm guessing that the owner is maybe here in the audience, if there's any, yes or no?
Question,
we're both there.
Okay. So I guess maybe if the commissioners have any questions for you directly as well, they may do that. Okay. Sorry, just wanted to get that on the record before we moved on.
Okay, so, well, we'll just go around the horn. Shelley, you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple comments. One is that I look at this, and given how the property around it is zoned, I think it's almost like reverse spot zoning, that it probably should be MN. But having said that, as I said in the last meeting, I was very interested in knowing what the neighbors on Knoll Drive, which is the access to clearly a residential neighborhood, thought about this and the proposed access onto Knoll. However, also understanding, and I think that the audience needs to understand that as well, that what's in front of this commission is not this site plan, not that there's going to be an access onto Knoll, not that this building is going to be where it's located on this particular plan. That is a subject matter for future meetings, future submissions, and that I think I'm right in saying this, and that all we're talking about tonight is not your plan, but whether or not this property should be rezoned to allow for some kind of development that would be subject to future future review, future requirements, future commentary about access, and whatever that ended up going to be, whether it's a dental office or retail or 2 stories or whatever it is. That's not what we're here to discuss today.
Correct.
So, as I said, I absolutely want to hear what the neighbors have to say and their input, but I do think it appears to me that it would be more appropriately zoned MN, but again, open to hearing what everybody has to say.
I apologize, I missed the last meeting, so I'm catching up. I did read the minutes of the meeting and I have reviewed the application and I've also visited the site. And I was involved as part of the task force that the town set up when they initially looked at the rezoning for the entire town. That concept was that zoning boundaries would be drawn around property boundaries. That being said, had I been aware that the two properties were held together, then it would have been a consistent and logical step that the town would have zoned this property that's being considered tonight as MN to begin with. As Shelley said, the zoning change does not direct anything other than the uses that are allowed on the property. The way it's developed is evaluated in a further analysis. So I would have to agree with Shelley and say, to be consistent in the way the town is drafted its zoning map, that this property should be rezoned to an MN.
Okay. Thank you. Al?
Well, most of my questions were going to address the whole plan. So the fact that we're only doing the rezoning, I think I'll hold off those questions until the next stage. I still have some issues on.
Well, there's some, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it seems to make sense just from looking at the area that an MN could be agreed to. But I still have my same issues from the last meeting. So I'll reserve those for till then.
and maybe just to jump in, and since we have a lot of folks that we don't necessarily normally see at the meeting, so kind of to explain like why we're talking about what we're talking about at what stage. A rezoning application, the purpose of it is different than a development application, as you know, some of the commissioners have kind of talked about already. So we do ask that a concept plan be submitted when we have a rezoning application submitted. That's just to kind of illustrate the discussion, because people are obviously going to ask, well, why do you want to do this? But that said, in state planning law, which we have to, work under and alongside, the purpose of this process is to ask the town decision makers, is this district that they're asking to change to appropriate for the location, for the character, for the goals in the comprehensive plan of the town? And so while it's good to know kind of what they're thinking, we do not perform zoning or engineering review at this stage, because fully engineered and laid out site plans are not required to evaluate that character and appropriateness of one district to another. So if this is approved by town council, ultimately, this plan will have to come back with all of those details and be reviewed to our code, but that is not what we're doing at this stage.
I do have a question. We did talk the last meeting about the possibility of looking to locate this in other areas that were available. Has that been undertaken, or even?
Well, they did look at other existing buildings that they would have to redo the inside to accommodate them, and a lot of the tenants wouldn't do that for them. They wanted to keep the same space format layout that they have. Some other buildings were just either too expensive or they didn't want to rent to them. This seems to be the ideal spot for them, because this way they own their own building, then they have control of their offices, and then they can build a great facility, have retail on the bottom for surrounding neighborhood in the parking facilities. But yes, they have looked around, and this seems to be the best option for them for what to suit their needs.
I have no further questions, right?
John?
Yeah, I would agree with what all the other commissioners have said so far. I'm leaning towards that rezoning this parcel is appropriate, given the adjacent parcel configuration and its current zoning. But I also want to hear what the residents have to say, because I mean ultimately they're the ones that are impacted by this and the, you know, zoning plan is supposed to work for. So that's all I had right now.
Jonathan?
I think when I look at this map and I see the existing MN zone and I see that one, how it's almost encompassed by that one, I think from one perspective, yeah, it could make sense that this could also be a mixed use zoning, right? But I think that, you know, this is more than a rezoning because it's a rezoning and a consolidation on this parcel. And I don't know if we need to adjust that on here because the intent is clearly to make this one parcel. So I think if we're looking at, you know, because the justification for the mixed use was, you know, the large plane and then the travel agency, this parcel combined would roughly be like 4 times the size of that. So, you know, you have those businesses with Babcock frontage. This is more on a side street. People's, you know, is that really the place for a building that's 4 times the size potentially of businesses with frontage on that busier street, you know, and away from the residential area. Also, the buildings on there, yes, it's currently mixed use, right? It was rezoned, but it's also more of a residential type structure. It's not I mean, it's used for commercial purposes, but I think the original intent, it was probably a house when it was originally built. So those are my concerns.
Okay. And I'll follow up with the question that Al asked, because I asked it last time, and specifically not that you were going to look at other existing buildings to redevelop, but would you look, or did you look, and would you look at other spaces that you could develop, just like this one is going to need to be developed? And I know specifically I mentioned at the intersection of Perry Highway and Cumberland, which ironically was originally planned to be a dental office at one time. That has not gone forward. I also mentioned Corporate Drive, for anybody who knows, where it's across from the current, there's a daycare center, and there used to be a Chinese buffet and I forget the other restaurant. Fridays, yeah. Those lots are vacant and available. And did either of those or any of those get looked at pursuant to the comment last time?
I'm not sure. You looked into it?
We did the one on Corporate Drive. They did not want to sell.
Would you mind? I'm sorry, just identifying yourself for the minutes.
Victoria Benco.
Okay.
We looked at the one on Corporate Drive. They didn't want to sell to office building like what we want to build. They want a restaurant again, that type of business in that spot, because we were interested in that as well. And the People's location is about a mile. Well, my current office, we rent on Corporate Drive, and People's is just a mile from my office, so it would be close from my existing patients and easy transition for them.
Okay. That was the only question that I had from last time, and I wanted to follow up on this time.
I do want to agree with you on this one thing, and I'm trying to slice it so we're talking about zoning and not about what the development looks like. But I do have a concern if we rezone this of the impact on that neighborhood and on that intersection where on People's and Duncan. It just doesn't. It looks to me that's a little bit of a that it could be a little bit of stretch, even though under the guidelines it could be an MN classification. But I am concerned about how it's going to affect those two areas.
That'll be something we would investigate during the land development process at that point.
Right.
But you're concerned about the traffic. We're not at that point. Now we have a concept what we like to do at building. The other thing was without that rezoning of the 8807, the shape of the of 8801 kind of restricts the building size and location because the yard requirement. I have parking I got to put in there. I got to have landscaping and so forth, which really prohibits the type of size of building we can get in there to accommodate the dentist's office that they need. So with both of them there, we would have a nice piece on the corner that we can develop and do a first-class project there.
And to the question about you know, traffic access impacts, because Peoples is a state road.
No,
You
I
know,
realize it's a state road. My
Yeah.
problem is, if we, in some respects, if we change this and we exasperate the traffic problem because of our decision, we don't know that PennDOT is going to look at the traffic the same way we would look at the traffic.
That's
And
what
so
I'm
we
saying.
may punt some of those issues to them, and they may not resolve them in a way that we would think is
Right.
that's
Like,
my nuance of that.
To speak, like, for example, to speak to that, usually whether a traffic light is warranted or not, like, that's a decision that PennDOT makes, not a decision that we get to make. We do have in the new saldo some triggers for traffic impact studies, whether PennDOT says we need them or not, but they're probably more significant than a development of this size would generate. Like, it's something like 1,500 additional trips compared to prior, or 75 new trips in a peak hour, which for this size of building, I don't think it's going to cross our local threshold. Whether PennDOT requires a traffic impact study, that's up to them, but we just can't say until we got to that point. So, you know, to your point, it's maybe not exactly as clear, like what would be able to be done related to traffic.
I have a question. So if this 8807 was rezoned, would you then attempt to consolidate both lots in those?
That would be part of the land development. Yes, we would consolidate into one lot.
It and
Because the building sits in the.
Well, right. So to my point, I mean, if this was, you know, 4, you know, similarly sized parcels as Large Plain, I think it would make sense to make that and right, or to do it in half, so you don't get what a 12,000 foot building.
Well, so if it's an assemblage, like a collectively owned number of parcels, you can still develop it if it's all the same zone as if it is one site. In general, I would recommend, if people are doing that, to consolidate, just to eliminate confusion about setbacks. But like, whether it is 2 parcels or 1 at the end of the day doesn't really change what they could build on it. It's how much commercial contiguous land is there.
So I guess to my earlier concern, if they bought the adjoining parcel like to the north of that, they can just kind of expand, you know, and build because then, like, oh well, let's rezone that because it makes sense, because it's right next to this one, it's the same owners.
Personally, it's not that that's really like what's on the table right now, but personally, if that was a question coming to this body, I would say a parcel that is not adjacent to Peebles Road is not necessarily the same character as one that has a border that is adjacent to a state road. You know, I think, again, rezoning is ultimately up to, you know, the decision makers in the community. It's a bit more of a subjective choice. But that said, I think there's a planning reason for not continuing that extension. There is a different set of variables when it's not touching people.
Would agree.
I have something to add about traffic and parking. I don't know if I should do that now, right?
Could you just, I know that you're one of the owners of the property, but if you wouldn't mind just stating your name for the record.
Karen Constantine.
Okay.
They said we own the daycare center there on Peebles at 8801 for 18 years. They ran it. We were licensed with them for 50 children, and we ran before COVID full most of the time. So you imagine those kind of peak hours in the morning between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. We had not only our full staffing, which was up to a dozen staff, who some of them parked on Knoll, in the grass area on the side or in the lot. But we also had up to 40 to 50 parents coming in between those morning rush hour hours, and then throughout the day, but mainly later in the day, between the hours of 4 and 6 for pickup. And all we had was the little front lot in Peebles in front of the home that was the front of the daycare. So I'm not sure in terms of number of patients who come in, but knowing that you have appointment times and it's more staggered, I can't imagine that there would be a lot more traffic than what we experienced at those few times, Monday through Friday and the weekend events.
Thank you. Any other comments from up here? If not, I guess we're open to the public comments.
there are quite a few of you, so would everyone who intends to make a public comment, Jean's Mark?
I have, okay.
If everyone who intends to actually make a public comment could please raise their hands, that'll maybe give us an idea of how to order this. Okay, why don't we go left to right row, like, you know, second row, third row.
We go begin first.
Huh?
This is what we did first.
Oh, okay. Are you speaking for like a group? Okay.
Most of us, at least I do, agree with everything he had to say.
Okay, so
Okay,
if he says basically what you're thinking, does that remove anyone that
That would keep me.
okay. Even if he talks, who else still wants to talk? Okay, that's a little easier to manage. So why don't you go ahead and come up first, and then we'll try to kind of go down a row.
Is it appropriate just to mind locally speaking 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the edit.
Okay.
Yeah, but for anyone who wasn't here when we did sort of our little housekeeping speech at the beginning, 5 minutes for public comment. It's not necessarily a back and forth. The commissioners may have a couple questions, but we're going to try to keep it to kind of that tight 5. Okay.
So my name is Riley Bushek, and I live at 8937 Knoll Street, which is the property adjacent to 8807.
Sorry if you wouldn't mind, just I was trying to figure out the most effective way to take notes here. So I got your name. What's your address?
8937 Knoll Street.
I'm sorry, is this the property directly across the street?
This is that
The one
abuts
behind
it abuts north of the commercial property.
2-story.
We just built a brand new home there. Yes.
Got it.
So I stand here and represent 51% of the 51 residents of Knoll, Locust, Maple, Elm, and Knoll Street. I have a signed petition by those residents, many of which who are behind me, that are in agreement that we stand in solidarity to block this redevelopment and zoning. That represents 74% of the houses in that area. When we moved into the neighborhood, we wanted that to be our forever. We knew the ramifications, but this building poses several risks to this community. Now, we know this is a concept plan, but we also know that there will most likely be an ingress or an egress onto Knoll Street. So that, you know, really aligns with our safety concerns for the neighborhood. We have children walking to the bus. We have neighbors that walk dogs. We have people that walk on the street. Our neighborhood is not conducive to walking on a sidewalk, as we don't have any. Secondly, the traffic at Peebles and Knoll and Duncan is truly something that we should take into consideration. We have people turning from Duncan onto Peebles out of the large plane onto Knoll. It gets really, really messy at rush hour. It really does. And I urge anyone to come and watch and take a peek. You know, the increased traffic congestion, you know, would most certainly come onto Knoll Street. Commercial properties, as we know, generate a lot of light and or noise pollution, which could include trash pickups, delivery vehicles, you know, lights from parking lots, that sort of thing. And as neighbors who have lived in this community for decades, it's very detrimental. And again, where does it stop? The next house that goes, a commercial developer can come in, we can be having the same conversation right down Peebles Road. It's kind of like what happened with Babcock Boulevard years ago, and that's probably predates my birth, but we know that Babcock Boulevard at one time was all houses and just got eaten up one after the other. Impact on property values is big. I know the developer stated it would increase property values. However, being a homeowner that is directly adjacent to a 12,000 square foot building would most certainly not improve my property value. And I speak for all the neighbors as our direct sentiment. I want to touch on the fact that there are 16 potential commercial development sites in McCandless. There are many more in Wexford, and there are many more in Ross that are all subject to development, including the TGI Fridays property, including Corporate Center Drive, including ones that are as far north as Route 19 and near the Lincoln dealership. There's 6,000 square feet there. There's 6,000 next to McDonald's. There's 4,500. So very conducive to a dental office. My neighbors and I, you know, look at this as very detrimental to our peace and the tranquility of our neighborhood. You know, many of which, as I said, have lived there for decades. They've raised children there. They've raised grandchildren there. And now they're going to have to stare at a 12,000 square foot building that poses serious safety concerns for our neighborhood. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know I speak on behalf of many of the folks behind me on this matter. And if anyone would like to see the petition, I can, certainly leave this with you or give you copies. I believe RJ has one as well. So, please.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, those of you who still speak, hands up, please, and we'll try to go down a line. All right, I think, ma'am, in the flannel, you are maybe the frontmost, so let's take you next.
My name is Deanna Frank, that's Deanna, and I live at 8932 Knoll Street. I live catty corner to this and probably right across from the proposed drive on to Knoll Street. So, I'm here to speak against the rezoning of the property on Knoll Street and Peoples Road with an office building, possibly the dental office and or other businesses. I've lived on this property in this neighborhood for 15 years and believe this change would negatively impact the street and the families residing here. Having a parking lot access to the lot on the street would be devastating effects to the safety and the current residents, making access in and out of our neighborhood very challenging. I understand that you're looking at the zoning for that property, but as a whole, it affects that whole property. There are approximately 50 houses in the neighborhood who use this entrance onto Knoll Street for access in and out, and without a doubt, this business would cause increased traffic onto Knoll Street. There are multiple families with school-age kids that live in the immediate surrounding houses. These children with school bus stop at the intersection of People and Knolls. There's already no sidewalks, as was stated before, in our neighborhood, and would pose a major safety concern to have cars in this parking lot. The businesses coming in and out of the street while the children are walking to and from this bus stop. Further, focusing further on the safety, there have been studies really, which has kind of been answered here, about accidents that have already occurred on Peoples. If you look at Peoples and Duncan, there are accidents on that intersection all the time. I understand you're saying this is a state road, but at the same time, this development would absolutely impact the traffic that would come onto there. And I can't imagine, the increased traffic and the difficulties of cars pulling across the traffic onto Peoples from Knoll. Are the McCandless Police Department and the local EMS prepared to respond to increased accidents that will undoubtedly occur here due to this if this proposal passes? And also the intersection with even down at Sample and Cumberland and Peoples is also a very challenging intersection to get onto Peoples at that time too, which would also increase the traffic with this office building. The proposed large commercial property with parking lot and multiple entrances would have additional consequences to the environment and the surrounding neighborhoods and negatively impact our quality of life. These include, but are not limited to, the increased lighting around the building, which would be disruptive to the families in the area, the increased noise pollution, which will impact this quiet community, an increase in people in the area, which would disrupt privacy and could potentially bring crime to this area. And one of the, we feel that adding an office to our street does distract from the value of our property and the usability of our street. I again agree with my neighbor who says that, they're saying that the property values would increase. I don't think that many people really want to live catty corner to a large office building where their driveway is pretty much, decently across the street from where this would be proposed to pull out onto Knoll. I just would like to say that, I'm not opposed to development, but, we prefer keeping that house that is currently there at home and zone residential on that corner of Knoll and Peoples. And, appreciate if another solution could be explored to where the central office could go somewhere else and that commercial property that's there.
Any comments?
May I just ask one point of clarification? Did you say that the only school bus stop for Knoll is at the corner of Peoples and Knoll?
I didn't say the only one, but there is one at Peoples and Knoll.
Okay. But the bus does pull on to Knoll?
No, it's on Peoples and Knoll, that's the corner.
So the only stop for the school district is on Peoples and Knoll? at the corner.
Yeah, and we don't have any sidewalks. The kids would be, if you look at how that property is, it's kind of hard to see too, as the kids would be like walking up with that driving down.
One comment, just for clarification, if this property were to be developed, a part of the requirement of redevelopment is that sidewalks be installed for property that is redeveloped. So there would be a sidewalk along Knoll and along Peebles. So that don't exist now.
Just on that property though, that
Yes,
doesn't include anywhere else.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't go further up Knoll. That's not our right to do that, but we do have the right to ask for and insist upon sidewalks to be for any property that's being redeveloped on the facing streets.
Okay.
The driveway can come out there. Not worth it. I think maybe it would be good.
Next, whoever is next.
My name is Norm Gottrin. I'm at 8848 Maple Street.
Oh, please.
Gottron.
RON, and you are at
8848 Maple Street.
Got it.
Which is the other side of the neighborhood from where we're talking about. But that street, Maple Street, will be most affected by something happening there because you can't get out of Knoll at Peebles very easily. So everyone coming out of that parking lot is going to head down Maple Street. And there's going to be a lot of traffic to do that because it's a lot easier to get out at our end than it is up at that end. So there will definitely be issues. Now, tree fell down across Peebles a couple months ago. Everybody came through Maple Street, rushing through there. It was amazing. I had to stand out in the street to act like I was walking in the street to slow people down from going through the neighborhood. But that would be a definite street increase in traffic through that neighborhood, especially from a driveway coming onto Knoll out of that property. So, and we do have a bus stop up at our end at Locust and Peebles, but there is no, and cars coming in there, coming out of there, you're not going to put a sidewalk along Peebles or Maple Street. You're still walking in the street. So that would be detrimental to us, the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rachel Sempf, SEMPF. I live at 8813 Peebles. So in all the diagrams, the only house that's showing is mine. My husband and I have two little kids. I have an almost 3-year-old. I have a 10-month-old. We lived in Avalon for several years. We moved out of Avalon because, as you all may be familiar, it's very close. Everybody is right on top of each other. Lots of businesses. We moved specifically to McCandless to get away from all of that. We wanted to be in a neighborhood. We wanted a neighborhood feel. We wanted a yard. We have a very nice backyard and a very nice side yard, which is directly across the street from where a driveway parking lot would be off of Knoll. I don't think that that is increasing safety for my children who want to be outside playing. I also want to give you guys some examples about traffic, right? And we're all talking about traffic. I was outside today from 4 to 4:30, peak hours, right? There were 5 cars that drove up Knoll. 5. You put a business in there, that's going to increase 10 times. The other example, I work from home a lot. I leave at 5 o'clock every day, pull out of my driveway to go get my son from daycare. I can pull out of my driveway pretty easily right now. You put a parking lot and a building there at 5 o'clock, I'm never getting out of my driveway. Not to mention, I have to turn left onto Peebles to go to daycare, right? That peak time is when I'm outside, when I'm leaving my home to pick up my children. It has a direct impact to my family to also put an office building across the street from my home. I really, really would like all of you to consider what that would mean for your home. Do you want an office building directly across the street from any of your homes? So I think that's all I have to say, but I do want to mention, it's not going to increase my property value, especially mine. I'm directly across the street from it. Nobody's going to want to buy my home and look at an office building. Not that we're moving anytime soon, right? This is where we would like to be for a very long time. But if I do resell, that's a direct impact to me. So any questions, but I thank you guys for listening.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank
you. Did we have anyone else who wanted to speak? Oh, I see a hand.
Natalie Gautrin, Norm's wife, 8848 Maple Street. We have lived there 40 years. 40 years. We built our home at the other end. I've seen the neighborhood turnover. We are now the old people of the neighborhood. We raised 3 children there. We now have 9 grandchildren who come and see us. And we've seen our neighborhood turn over. And we have young people with young families. I walk that neighborhood every morning. I just retired. I walk it every morning. And my neighbor isn't wrong when she says there were 5 cars. I can walk the circle and not have a car pass me, but I see all my neighbors. And I'm sorry, I'm just so nervous. I want to really welcome our new neighbors who built that house next to the area that you want to rezone. They are such nice people, such a young family with hopes and dreams. I can't imagine building a house and then having this fall on you next to your home that you just built. I mean, I urge you, please don't rezone that home. When we moved in 40 years ago, that was that house that you want to rezone, which was a house that was lived in with a family. And the daycare was also a home. We have a wonderful neighborhood. It should not change. I really urge you to please don't rezone that. I love my house. I love my neighbors, my neighborhood. It would change everything for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone? Oh,
we have a few.
We'll get you next.
Hi. Janice. My maiden name is Chips, CHIPS. Koneski, KONESKY.
KONESKY?
I am part owner of 8985 Knoll Street. I grew up in that neighborhood. I lived there for 64 years. My parents built that house in 1952. They are probably currently the oldest. I agree with everything that everybody said. The bus stops, the traffic, trying to turn off of Peebles to go up to Duncan Manor at anywhere from 4 to 7 is almost impossible. You know, I almost always go the whole way around. But my biggest question is, I don't know anything about town meetings and politics and stuff, but if they get permission to put a 2-story business, is that all they can do? Or what's to stop them from building a 4-story building?
Could not do that. I can tell you that. The max for this district is 3 stories.
Okay, so instead of 2, they're going to make it 3.
It could be.
You know, which is going to mean more traffic, more cars, more lights, more everything. You know, where's it going to end? And what's to stop them from taking over the pizza shop, taking over where the travel agent is. You know, it just, that was a neighborhood. It's still a neighborhood. We fought the township when they tried taking Knoll Street to Passavant Hospital. It's a neighborhood. It should stay a neighborhood. We're not opposed to development, but there should not be a road, a driveway that comes out to a neighborhood. They were able to pull out of the daycare. They were able to pull out of the pizza shop. Why do they have to have it come out on the Knoll Street?
Thank you.
Okay, I know I told you that you were next. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Christine Lutz, Lutz, and I live at 9009 Knoll Street. So I'm actually at the opposite end. And I understand this is just preliminary things. When I moved there 21 years ago, Duncan Avenue did not go through to McKnight Road. That happened afterwards. Cumberland did not come to Peoples. That happened afterwards. The two new apartment buildings up at Duncan Manor, which is a half a mile from the intersection in question, were not there. That happened afterwards. All of this has just increased traffic at that light. The daycare, people pulled in and out of. And I was always one of the people in my car going, come on, hon, this is a lousy intersection. I was letting them out. I don't mind that. I like to be a kind person. But if I was coming back from McKnight Road, trying to get to Knoll Street, and the guy in front of me wanted to turn left on Duncan, I can't go around him. The right turn to Duncan is a turning lane that only has a light. It's no turn on red. That light is not supportive of the traffic in the community now. I don't see the need to add another business. Having Knoll Street in the plan is kind of stupid. I'm sorry, that's my opinion, but we're talking an area here that's a very tight intersection. You've got a fire hall there. You want the fire trucks to not be able to get through because there's more traffic because of a building. You've got funerals going on with the cemetery. You've got the church when that lets out. And of course, if I'm trying to make a left on Knoll, I can't do it. I have to go down to Maple to Locust to make a left. That's not the way this should work. This will just add far more congestion, not to mention if any of you have ever been through there, when it's raining really hard, that intersection gets a little wet and floody. I see more runoff problems. I see a lot more issues with this. And I seriously think that the board needs to take into consideration that there are probably other properties to develop. I understand the developers want to make it easy for them. It's more affordable for them. I get that. I understand the current owners have been paying taxes and I thank them for that. I pay my taxes too. But that area is so congested. Church, you got Lucian, the large plane, whatever. You got a fire hall. You got the hair salon. All these businesses are converging in a place where 30 years ago there was a farm. This is, and all these apartment buildings. I just truly hope that the board takes this into consideration, how much these access to McKnight Road, to Cumberland, all these other things. McCandless Crossing was not there. It's there. That needs to be looked at because this is traffic coming in, not just to my street, the general area, and at Knoll and Peebles and Duncan. And it's just very congested. I think that it would be a very bad idea. And I think that it would be more detrimental to the township in the long run, as well as its residents in the immediate community and those that travel that intersection, than the benefit of rezoning it for one property where we don't need it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come forward, please.
Good evening, everyone. 8813 Peoples, right at the edge of no, right across from where you guys are planning to.
And your name, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Melvin Travis.
And you said 8831?
No, 8813.
8813. Sorry.
Yeah. So all I wanted to say is just that there's a lot of other places that these people could build a business at. And like there's no reason that they should build it across from us, because like she said, it's just a lot of traffic, and it's really going to jam everything up. And then how would you guys feel if somebody built a business across from where you stay? I mean, there's no way you'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool, yeah. No, nobody wants a business across from where they stay. And that's really the main thing. Like, we got kids, really small kids, and it's just not ideal for us or anyone else who lives on Knoll for a business to be made. And then the last thing I wanted to say, I just wanted to ask, is this a foregone conclusion and you guys are just letting people vent, or are you guys really taking this into consideration?
Well, we certainly take it into consideration. It's not a foregone conclusion. We do not make the final determination.
Okay.
It will go to zoning committee.
Well, town council.
Town council, and through the zoning, they will make the final decision. We are, for lack of a better term, advisory. They will listen to what we might have voted or what we might have to say. They will listen to all the comments that you people have stated. But it is the town council ultimately is their decision, not ours.
And I will add for anyone who was not here last month. So you probably got one of the letters directly, because I think you're straight across from the property. Our typical protocol and what's required, by our ordinance is that we send out letters directly to adjacent property owners that tell you when the town council public hearing is, because as our chairman said, that's sort of where the final official decision is made. But at our last meeting, when this was first discussed, the planning commission specifically asked that this meeting be included in those notification letters as well, because they did want to hear directly from the neighborhood. So that's something that you all proactively asked be done.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm the only one that received a certified letter.
There should have been at least 3 that went out. I know I got called by one. You didn't get one?
No, actually, he gave me his letter.
Oh, well, that was an error. I apologize. It was supposed to be. Yeah, we have the okay. We'll double check and see where that actually went, because we have the green card certified letter.
And meet all our neighbors.
Yeah, this is a nice neighborhood group here. Yeah, if that was the case, I apologize. I know that we sent 3 certified letters out, so if something happened in between it getting to you and us sending it out, that was definitely not intended.
Okay.
You will make a recommendation at this meeting.
Can we, I'm sorry,
Steve Brotzik.
Okay, Steve B. P.
ROT as in Tom, ZIK.
Okay, and you are at
8961.
961. Thank you.
Well, the planning commission will make a recommendation one way or another tonight.
Yes.
And then if it's a go, you'll go to see to the township council.
Either way, it has to go to a public hearing before town council. So even if they recommend no at this meeting, the public hearing is still the next step in the legal process.
Thank you.
Any others? Any other comments? Sure. Come on up, please.
I apologize for not remembering your names. Tim Triplett, I own the property at 9001 Peebles.
Did you say Tim?
Triplett, Triplett.
And address.
I reside in 9009 Knoll Street. I own the property at 9001 Peebles. Okay. Just to comment on your question about the bus stop. It is at the bottom of Peebles, and it's at the bottom of Knoll Street and Peebles where they meet. There's been a crossing guard there for 21 years that I've known of, and I'd say there's a safety issue that's already been addressed, or you wouldn't have a crossing guard there. So why do you want to congest the area even more? That's a concern for the children. This man, I apologize for not remembering your name, but you addressed the problems perfectly when you said the traffic situation, and I don't know if it's up to PennDOT or whatnot. They've been looking at this intersection that I've been informed for over 50 years. Until that intersection is addressed, you shouldn't develop anything, because any of you know what it's like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It backs up from Belisarios to the Marathon Station, from the Marathon Station all the way to the North Park Lounge. So, you know, if you're going to, why develop another office building when you have McCandless Phase 2, you have McCandless Crossings Phase 1, there's building everywhere, and I'm not going to sit here and cry about the development because it's inevitable. There's more people in this world, I get it, but it's just not the right proper place to be putting in an office building. And if it does go through and you push it through, I urge you not to let it go onto Knoll Street. That is the parking lot. I looked at the proposal. The parking lot that is there is understandable behind the building, but to have it access Knoll Street is very concerning, because like the gentleman said, people will be driving down Maple Street. I own the property at the end of Knoll Street. The next solution will be to open that to Cumberland. And the next thing you know, you're going to turn Knoll Street into People's Road. So it is a traffic issue. And then what you had your setbacks on what you said is 100% right. Until you address turning lanes in that intersection, it just doesn't seem like a good idea. So, you know, I think and to your point, sir, it was originally a home that turned into a bookstore, and then the other was a landscaping commercial. It was a house. It was a so these were homes that were built, that were homes and buildings, not an office building. And there is an office building, by the way, right next door where the Apple Vacation is, and I'm pretty sure there's a vacant spot upstairs where the chiropractor used to be. So if you can't find another place for an office building, I apologize, but that's really just not appropriate. And I just think you should reconsider to put something else there that's beneficial to the community. Appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Evening, everyone. My name is Mike Lash. I reside at 9002 Knoll Street, right across the street from Tim and Christine. I don't know if this is appropriate or not for this meeting, but I'm a licensed mental health professional in the area, and I mean, none of my neighbors are my patients, of course. But well, maybe. But I have a lot of patients talk about seeing empty business fronts that are still in existence and feeling very disheartened and even considering moving out of the area. To me, it almost seems like an ethical issue of, yes, legally, can we rezone this property, but should we, if people were disheartened at already seeing empty businesses? I don't know if this is appropriate for today, just to say that, but I think as part of the community and how we feel successful with what we already have, that should probably be something to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? I'd say no. Any other comments from the planning commission?
RJ, if you're the one or the engineer
So is rezoning the parcel at the corner to match the lot that surrounds it? We have that whole area. The proposal, which is what it is, has the ingress and egress to Peebles, but also to Knoll.
Mm-hmm.
Given the location of the frontage on Peebles, is rezoning that corner lot basically a fait accompli that there has to be an ingress egress off of Knoll? Or could it be such that there would not be whatever the distance from intersections we may have to fit it in, just an ingress egress off Peebles?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and we do have Kelly at least on Zoom, although traffic engineering is kind of usually a specialty. So like we have a specific traffic engineer at Gateway that is not involved. Yes, you want to be involved in this development, but just kind of thinking through this question from a zoning and Saldo perspective, I do not yet know off the top of my head whether it would absolutely be required for the Saldo to build an egress. For the folks in the audience, just so you know, this we haven't actually had an application come in through our new subdivision and land development ordinance. We just passed it a few months ago, so haven't memorized it all yet, but I know how to look things up if they come to it. That said, usually ingress and egress and like flow of site design and movement is something that is in the Saldo, which means even if there is a requirement to have an egress on all frontages, that is something that would be subject to a modification request, which means town council could ultimately waive it if they felt that the result of not having it was equal to or better than the code otherwise requiring it. Not that I'm sure that that is a requirement, but point being, we could sort of make that decision to waive it if it is a requirement, if they feel that it's better to just have ingress egress on Peebles. However, since Peebles is a state road, there might also be some say that PennDOT has, and I've not dealt with an application in this exact configuration say, oh yeah, PennDOT would usually require this or PennDOT would not, but depending on the traffic volume coming out and how close it is to the light, they might say it really needs to have an exit on the side street. They might say, well, the side street isn't ours, so we're not going to have an opinion on that. I think all of that is to say it's really hard to say what their actual requirement or recommendation might be. However, if our code did require access points on any public frontage of the property, we could at least make the decision locally to waive it if it was just up to us. So that was a long answer, I'm sorry.
So RJ, another question. As the current lot is zoned, there could be driveways on Knoll Street for commercial, for development.
That is true.
That is permitted under the zoning now.
That is true.
Okay.
I have a question to you, RJ. I should have brought a copy of the new Saldo, but for the landscape buffer, because there are numerous issues, I think, with the current concept plan. Putting a lot of those aside,
yes.
As far as the concerns from the neighbors with, seeing an office building and a parking lot, what are the current landscape requirements that would be in place?
Yes, I actually do know this one. That's exciting. So our standard buffer depth in the new Saldo is 15 feet. The intensity with which that has to be planted, whether it's shrubs, bushes, or understory or canopy trees, depends on whether it is one of three types. I think it's called like screening, filtering, and softening. And if I recall correctly, when you're going from a residential use to a commercial use, the most intense of those three buffer yards is required to be planted. So that could be, and there are probably a couple different options for how to accomplish that, but I would imagine that would involve some trees, definitely some screening, bushes at least.
And we also have controls in the saldo regarding light spillage off the property and how the light is.
Yes, there are limitations on, you're not supposed to be able to see a light source. So like if they had a floodlight or something on the side of the building, the actual bulb would need to be shielded from view from a residential property. And I believe there's like a distance limit for basically how far the pooling of the light can.
And the candle feet, how
Yeah,
I
think it's foot candles. I'd have to look up. I know some weird lighting measurement that only lighting people know how to calculate, but there are limitations for spillage, basically.
One other question for the developer, I suppose, and if this was mentioned, I'm sorry I missed it. As part of the idea to redevelop the whole property, what happens to the childcare facility?
That'll be taken down.
Okay, so that will be eliminated.
Both buildings will be,
both
will be
buildings.
demolished, yeah.
Okay. Where I was going with that is whether, since that currently has egress into People's Road, that maybe one of them could be there. I don't know.
Well, we would hope to still maintain that egress. Most likely been already permitted by PennDOT. We would go in and ask for an update to that permit to change the use of that driveway. We submit for the HOP.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
Karen,
would you mind just coming up to the, it's just easier when we do minutes if we just talking.
The other comment that I wanted to make, and I know we have it up on the screen, but if you look at the property, because it really is right now 2 pieces of property, but the 801 Peebles property that we've owned, that we've had as a daycare for 18 years, which had been a daycare for 20 years prior to that. If you look at the property, most of that property, which is all lined in black, is that commercial property. So it's just the corner where the home is in yellow that we're talking about including. But because it is commercial property, if this deal doesn't go through, we're still in a place that we have to figure out what to do with that. We're not going to start the daycare again. So I just put that in your heads that we don't know what else could be developed there. That might not be a nice, quiet dentist office building, that would not be open during the night, that wouldn't be noisy, even like our daycare center. It could be next door. That was noisy from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week, sometimes on weekends. So it's just to consider that that is already commercial, right? Whether or not they pull it all together in one, it's still commercial. Even that a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice into that property and that business, and it wouldn't make sense for us to let it go as a residential piece because of all we've done with it. Regardless, it is commercial and it's going to stay commercial. And then we'd have to consider other business opportunities to go in there that might not be as advantageous or quiet. I completely agree with you about knowing that could be a problem. But again, when our staff was there, even parents would pull up on the side. We don't know what the traffic is like. I do think, it is a commercial area. We've got the pizza with the church, the cemetery. It has continued development. And we completely understand. We raised 4 children, but we live in a residential neighborhood as well. So I really hear what you're saying, that we're kind of in a position that we need to do something with this property. And we can't just keep it vacant like this. And nobody's going to want to rent. It's a converted daycare center. It's as a home. We looked at that already. So I just say that it's like you have to consider what the possibilities are. Consider as it is, that goes on to know through that. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you raise children in the house? You said you raised your kids in the residential.
Yeah, I didn't know that. No.
Oh, so you didn't.
No, my kids went. My kids went to
just checking to make sure that you're.
That's why I say I'm sensitive. I mean, I feel for you, I do. It's just
It just seems like the needs of the few are trying to outweigh the needs of the many. But I'm not talking about just the neighborhoods in Middle Street. I'm talking about everybody that's got to go through that intersection.
I agree. I go through those intersections multiple times every day. We have business over the health, personal narrative for that 30 years. Again, it's a residential neighborhood clarification, and I understand, and I know that it's traveling. But we didn't create that. It's like that's been happening, and this is just part of it.
Let's okay. Excuse me. Sorry.
Commercial.
Apologies. I don't want to cut off a good neighborhood conversation, you know, but just to try to keep the meetingly, you know.
That's how I work. That it is commercial.
Appreciate all of your comments and positions, though. Thank you.
You stood up, but
I would just say I'd rather listen to children playing than look at small bushes and lights that are going to light up my house, even with variances and saldo, than Sarah 12,000.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from up here? Okay. We're at a point where it is, we need a motion to either accept or reject, and this is the preliminary, our opinion, as to whether we will accept the rezoning application. Can I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, it is so moved. I will make one comment before I vote. And that is that I think this property calls out for rezoning. I think it's surrounded by another property that it's an island that doesn't make sense if you were to look at it at a 30,000 foot level for rezoning. This calls out for rezoning to match the surrounding properties. So if I were to rely on that alone, I would vote for the rezoning, but I will not. And my reason for not, everybody else can say what they want. My reason for not is because I asked and I suggested that other properties be seriously looked at. I didn't get a good warm feeling that they were seriously looked at. I know there are other properties that could be developed. And so I am of the opinion that if those properties did not exist, that would be a different story. But they do exist, and they exist within a short distance of this property, a mile or less, or thereabouts. And so I'm of the opinion that I think those properties should be much more aggressively pursued. And for that reason, I personally, in this motion to accept, I would vote no.
Okay, so I think since we already potentially had not just a unanimous vote here, depending on how this goes, it would probably be best to do a roll call so I record everything accurately. So are we ready to call the vote right now? Okay. Shelley?
Nay.
Anne?
Yes.
Al?
Nay.
Brendan?
So my position, I am opposed. Like Dan, I believe in from a strictly zoning perspective, this property should be rezoned. I have serious questions though about the traffic on Peoples. And because that is such an open question, that area is such a disaster, I think that we need to figure out from PennDOT or from whomever as to the commercial, residential, whatever the ingress and egress is for this area, to have more information before we would entertain a rezoning that someone could rely on to say, I can put this in now because you rezoned it for this purpose. And without that information, I can't support a rezoning.
Okay, so we're going with nay.
It's a long nay.
Now with the stuff, you
said opposed, and then you a short comment. I'll make it shorter than Brent. I want to say that regardless of the plan that's submitted here, there's nothing that this body can do to prevent a commercial development on that large parcel. And so I know that the concerns that are brought up about a commercial development going on that, in this area,
but that is currently zoned for commercial uses, and there's nothing that we can do if a plan came forward that had met all the requirements within that parcel to really have a good justification to reject it. That being said, I've heard the numerous comments that came, and I also will vote nay.
Jonathan.
I'll also say no with explanation. I think there's just as much, if not more of an argument that the commercial could be rezoned residential. You know, they're both original residential properties on it. Combining this to make it a 4 times the size of the neighboring adjoining commercial does not fit within the characteristics and styles of this area of our community. So my vote is no.
Damn.
And you heard mine, no.
No. Okay, so that is a rejection of the recommendation to approve by the Planning Commission. As we mentioned earlier, this will now move on to Town Council for their public hearing on October 23rd. Most likely, they will then vote at the 2nd November meeting, which is going to be the 27th. So we will pass on this recommendation and the general goings on of this meeting and eventually a set of minutes to Town Council. But of course, you are all welcome to also show up to that public hearing and be heard. Thank you.
We would encourage you to show up at that public hearing because Town Council makes the ultimate decision. So if you want to be heard, do not rely on whatever you said here, that'll be all, because this is just a recommendation. So if you want to be a part of the process, show up there as part of the process, however you may feel. And that's why we put our positions here so the Town Council can consider our views and everyone who shows up to make the most informed decision possible, however it goes.
And I do want to just say, I have been through some large public meetings in my day. Some of them are more civil than others. I think you guys win the #1 award for most polite towards each other, even when you disagree. So, thank you everyone for being respectful.
Can I ask where that other meeting is? Is it
here? Yes, it will be here. Starts at 7:30.
Cannot be here.
No, they don't get involved for a rezoning.
That's the 2nd meeting in November.
The public hearing will be the 2nd meeting in October. The vote most likely will occur at the 2nd meeting in November.
So we should be here in October also.
If you want to make comments like this to council, yes. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We were just so soon.
But wait,
first time.
It was. Yes, they were.
They have every right to us.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I agree with that. No, they do. Yeah, I know, but I agree with.
We ask everyone to move outside. We have some more business to conduct.
I agreed with Brian. I don't think we have enough information. I agree with.
Can you like
that it should be.
Just the fact that that's on the record.
All right, after a very brief pause to let the meeting clear out, we're back and we're on to item number 2 of the agenda, which are temporary uses cleanup amendment.
So I'll give an update for this, and we also have Steve Corbel from the town attorney's office. So I compiled all of your comments from last month, took them to the town attorney, basically said, what do you guys think about this? You know, should we make any changes to the language? What are the impacts? The top line is, for the most part, they recommended that we keep things the same, although we did change the section header, so it's not duplicative. But I asked him to be here to answer any questions that you all had. What it boils down to is they basically said, for some of these, we're really overthinking it. And like for the noise question, since that is something that's actually regulated outside of zoning, the recommendation was we don't try to get into it in this section. The noise ordinance of the police enforce controls either way. The construction staging, I remember that was one that really, you know, I went, oh, they said that basically that was a, you know, a good thought, but we don't need to go that far. That's, you know, kind of covered in sort of the interpretation, and I would not enforce it that way.
That's not
Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking, other than the insurance question, which I'll just leave to Steve to speak to. But Steve, did you want to add anything before we sort of open the floor up to any questions they have for you?
I mean, I think you captured in general. I can talk to the insurance issue. There were concerns raised that it could open the town up to liability if the amounts that we may reference there aren't sufficient to cover a claim, etc. And I get that, but at the end of the day, the town is immune from suit except for the limited number of I'm sorry, I didn't even turn my camera on here. I'm sitting here with my hands and trying to talk to you all. So the town is immune from suit except for the minor items that the Tort Claims Act permits, and this is something that wouldn't be an exception. So I don't see any liability here. The amounts that are used in there are consistent with similarly sized communities, etc. And it's something that we would monitor if there's any change in the law or if the amounts appear to not be sufficient, and they could be changed over time or removed if there's a change in the law.
I have a quick question on the insurance. So I guess the requirement of the town to require the user to name the landowner as an additional insured, would that limit the pool of available insurance proceeds available to the town?
Potentially.
I mean, you're having a additional named insured on the policy rather than just the town.
The assumption is that a plaintiff would sue the entire group, right? So they would sue the property owner, the town, that sort of thing. So having everybody named as additional insured, I think we're all under the same. And then we may have separate coverage. I know the town probably would. The homeowner might. They might have an umbrella policy that would apply as well. So I hear what you're saying, but I just don't think that that's a likely outcome here.
Any other comments?
Can I just ask a question on this staging? Currently, it's 30 consecutive days.
Let me pull up my copy. But I
30 consecutive days.
Hang on. Let me pull this thing up. And then I will verify. I think it's either that or for the life of basically when a project is ongoing.
I thought there was an approved time frame that
20 days.
Yeah.
From the completion of the portion.
From the yes, that's what so it's not like a total limit. It's just once you're done, you have to have it taken down.
So it's okay. You got 30 days to take
20.
it. Okay.
Yes.
Is there a period you can do a construction staging? Like how long can that be?
I think that kind of gets a little bit into the nuance of enforcement, but there are some situations in which you will have a permit issued, and there are some situations in which the work being done may require construction staging, but does not require a building or a zoning permit. Like maybe landscaping, for example, or a new roof. So in those cases, I would say if there's a permit, there is, for the UCC, which is what governs the building code side of things, there is a set amount of time that you can have a valid building permit, and when it expires, if nothing is going on, it's depending on how it's enforced through the situation. It could be 6 months or a year before you need to have that permit reissued. If nothing is going on whatsoever and the permit has expired because it has not been renewed, then the clock would start at the date that permit expires to 20 days before we would start enforcement. If it's something that doesn't require a permit, if absolutely nothing has been going on for 20 days, that is when we would start enforcement of this issue.
Let me piggyback on that, because in the section 1303 230 temporary uses, A2 sub A sub 1.
Yeah.
Temporary use must not last for more than 30 consecutive days.
Only for if it's unlisted. So that would not apply to any of the listed uses. That would be for special exception approval.
Yeah. So my only concern is that we don't have competing deadlines. So if it's okay, so 1303 230A2 temporary use not in table 1303J is a special exception. That's only where 30 days applies.
Yes.
Okay. Everything else is a specifically enumerated time period.
Yes.
Cool. Got it. All right.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think the modifications were well done from a practical perspective, and I think there's going to be more of these to come as we. And RJ, you're working on them on a daily basis, so I think because I think this commission said in the beginning that we knew that the new code Zeldo wasn't perfect. This is a perfect example of put in use and find out the deficiencies.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know I would, and I think the rest of the commission would like to know what your running list is occasionally.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
sure.
because maybe we can get ahead of that.
Mm-hmm.
And these could have been things that we all had opinions about things.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe we might want to push forward more diligently.
This one in particular was a quick change that we did the pending ordinance resolution on, mostly because, you know, we realized we had events like that were happening right now.
I'm not criticizing you in any way. No, I think this is a good example of this in use and fixing it before long. But there's more to be dealt with.
Definitely, and this is something I've talked about with the town manager, is maybe either at the end of the year, probably at the beginning, you know, because the holidays get a little weird sometimes. Sort of doing like a state of the zoning union, you know, where maybe we just schedule a bit of time on the agenda to kind of pick through, here's some stuff that's on my mind. You know, we could go over the list of sort of what we have in the hopper, because mostly in the new budget year, like that's when we have the majority of the funds that we've requested to continue working with Carolyn, you know, on things like this. So that's kind of when the bulk of the work would kick off. So maybe we could do that in January. Please remind me in December, but I'll try to remember to put it on the agenda.
Because we all had a list of things that we were interested in fine tuning.
And we may have to kind of parcel that out into a couple amendments just to you know, not bog it down too much. But I mean, I think that is a good thing for us to prepare to
and to prioritize what's the most important.
Yes.
Anyway,
like
I'd be in
know
favor.
there are tweaky little things right now that, like, my running list is not big, you know. It's like, oh, we put the nits on this digital signboard too low, you know, for direct sunlight. Like, it's kind of more that nature, but yeah, I'll have something a little more functional by then that we can talk about.
Okay, so I need a motion to recommend that the town council adopt the temporary uses zoning ordinance amendment.
Move. I'll second.
So moved.
I'll second.
Al second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay. October 23rd is also this public hearing, so
it would be a good day.
Perhaps a less busy public hearing than the other, but we'll see.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, item number 3, approval of September 5, 2023 minutes. Does anybody have any edits, any comments whatsoever to the minutes? Looks like the answer is no. So I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Jonathan, motion.
Second.
Shelley, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention, Ann. All opposed? Approved. All right, item number 4 on the agenda is a general public comment.
We have one here. Oh,
Go for it.
Are you going to talk, sir?
that's just a compliment. That's a liaison for anyone watching.
Okay, I think you were going to read into the minutes. The statement by the owner of the property.
Oh, I did that for during the.
He did beginning.
Yeah.
Public comment.
Yeah, that was.
that here?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all in your emails as well if you want to revisit it.
All right. I swear to God, I don't remember. That's pretty scary. All right. I think that's it. There's a reminder here that the planning commission meeting will be on the 2nd Tuesday in November, not the 1st due to elections.
Oh.
And we need a motion to adjourn.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
It's interesting.